Welcome to the Be Unstoppable in the Zone podcast. My name's Lisa Clifford and I'm your host. Be Unstoppable for me is all about helping you unlock your incredible human potential and for you to access your mind in a way that it works for you. And that's why I became an empowerment and firewalking instructor, running events where people participate in a way that reveals to them who they truly are without a shadow of a doubt, and therefore enabling people, you, to live the life that you want without any limitation. Each episode in this series has guests that I'm interviewing that have valuable gems and nuggets and perspectives that have served them in their life, and also lessons that they've learned. And I just thought it'd be great to get under the bonnet, so to speak, in the zone and listen to their journey and stories. And I hope in some way that you connect to some part, if not all. So I hope you enjoy this next episode. Welcome, my old friend, David Taylor. Now, not old in age.
I'm not that old.
Old in time served, I would say. For those that don't know David is the CEO and president of Adriatic Luxury Hotel Group. Have I said that right? Adriatic?
Super.
Oh, there we are. We're getting a bit of Croatian there, I think. So David, when did you land in Croatia and start a new life? How long ago was that?
I guess the landing in Croatia bit happened in the end of May 2019, and that was for a meeting with the owners of the company I'm working with today, Jadranski Luxusni Hoteli, or Adriatic Luxury Hotels.
Showing off.
That was the very first time I'd ever visited Croatia, and I was really impressed with what I saw and experienced. And I then took up the role in September the 1st. So actually 4 years ago in 1 week's time.
Lovely.
And it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride since then, but it's been the most amazing experience.
Well, I think we should take people back to why I think it's newsworthy and listener proof for the Be Unstoppable in the Zone podcast. When we go back to, you started in hotels in London.
1990 originally.
33 years ago. 33 years ago. None of us are old enough to be saying anything was 33 years ago. And that's where you started your hospitality journey. And then we met 23 years ago. I think I was 30.
Yeah, we met in the year 2000.
We did, because I remember you interviewing me. I was not in a cast, but I'd previously broken my leg, falling off a table at a senior managers conference, dancing. And you and I already had a phone call lined up.
But I didn't know you'd fallen off a table and broken.
No, that was pre my disgrace. We'd agreed to meet up. I was at Chorus and Regal Hotels. You were a new sales director at Paramount Hotels. And we were referred to each other and we were about to meet up. But the shame of ringing you from my hospital bed, having disgraced myself. I mean, in hospitality, we've got to say, we do know how to have a good time, don't we? We can stay up all night and be the first up in the morning and be bright as a bunny.
This is the people business, and I think we know how to do that really well.
Yes. And so when I take myself back to then when, and to be fair, just to give a bit of backstory, our chairman would get us on the tables dancing, not at Paramount. Our chairman would get us on the tables dancing. So I was just honouring his protocol, really. But sadly, this table wasn't secure. Anyway, I had to ring you, David, from my hospital bed to say I can't make my interview. because I've broken my leg. And you came, when I was released from hospital, you came and visited me at my friend's farmhouse with my 2 golden retrievers at the time. And we sat around the kitchen table. I thought I'd make up with doing my CV on sterling, beautiful paper. And that's where our journey of uniqueness began. I mean, you did leave looking like
but I don't know how you got the job. Because I walked into that farmhouse wearing a new suit, and I left having met your 2 golden retrievers, and I looked like a sheep.
Picture the scene so well.
I love dogs, and I think they knew it. And before I knew where I was covered in golden retriever.
Oh,
it took me 2 weeks to get it off.
That has to be the interview that goes down in history for me. And I don't know how I got the job. I do remember starting working, and we went into that petrol strike crisis. So I started my new job with you with the petrol strike on. And I remember the hotel managers thinking that I was disabled. The next time that they see me, I haven't got me walking crutch, and I think it's been a miracle. Oh, so we go right back to then. So your journey from Paramount Hotels in 2000
Mm-hmm.
then took you where?
Well, with Paramount for a few years, and then Paramount was sold in 2003, and myself and the other 2 directors, we set up Q Hotels as a new company. And then I left Q Hotels. I have to think back now to make sure I get the years right, in 2011. And from there, I went to do some consultancy work with IHG that ended up being a long period of time in my life where I did a couple of jobs for them, but culminating as VP Commercial for UK and Ireland. And at that stage, the owners of those hotels, which was a collection of Holiday Inns, Crowne Plazas, they sold the hotels over a 12-month period, which was part of the team that went through the process of doing that. And from there, went to work with GLH Hotels in London, again, initially as a consultant, but they then retained me on a full-time basis and stayed there between January 2015 through to September 2019, or the end of August 2019. In the same role, really, as Chief Commercial Officer. And those changes were really, really good for me. I think I learned a lot moving from a different type of company to a different type of company. So Paramount, as you know, was a national chain of 16 hotels. Q Hotels was a completely new startup with private equity backing. IHG was a global brand, and the portfolio of hotels at the time I was working for was 65 hotels of all managed hotels, but with different owners. And then going into GLH, which was Singaporean owned, wholly owned, privately owned by a family, and then coming over to ALH, which is also owned by a family, ultimately in Chile. So lots of different types of ownership schemes and different ways of working and different methodologies, and it's been really interesting for me. And I've always felt as though I've been learning a lot going through that journey. And many people make the same journeys, and they take something new from every role.
But I have to say, David, maybe you've got a filter on, but you have not aged. You have not aged. Hospitality has not broken you. It's not made you jaded. It's suited you. And Paramount,
I think something's gone somewhere, but
yeah, there is. Well, I never saw the top of your head anyway. Being only 5'1" and you're 6'1", 2. 6'2", so yeah. I don't miss the top of your head. Never saw it, but Paramount was backed by venture capitalists, so that was when you were there. that was a real baptism by fire, because they're not easy to work for, are they?
Yeah,
I mean, I
I
know you
also
had a
moved
good
there from Hilton as well, which, as you know, is a very structured, precise, defined way of working. And we got to Paramount, and it was very fluid. Things were still, in startup mode in many ways, and the business needed clear strategy, direction, organization, ways of working, and
structures.
but it's great fun doing things like that because you have a level of freedom you don't always get in other organizations, and you're allowed to bring in your thinking and your personality, and in many ways I look back on Paramount as being a brilliant education because there wasn't really a lot there when we first got there, and it was a company that was struggling to generate turnover but could do profit quite well, mainly through cost management. So we were brilliant at managing costs, but the secret there was to improve revenue. And I think, I look back, and my two partners in the private equity company gave us a lot of backing and a lot of trust. And, we brought in new people and built a commercial structure and a team there. And it really accelerated the performance of that company. And that stood us in good stead when we then got into Q Hotels and did something similar, but I think better because we'd learned a lot of lessons beforehand. And I've tried to take that same thinking from each position to the next. Let's do it better, do it in a way that we can outperform it again. And going back to what you've said, hospitality, I think, has been very, very kind to me, and I think it's an amazing career. And a lot of people look at it and think, yeah, it's extremely hard work. Maybe it's not, but at the same time, you meet some of the most fantastic people who are so dedicated, and they have such a way of working with people, and it's really heartwarming, I think, and that's what keeps us all fresh, motivated. Every day is different. Every challenge is a different one, and that without a doubt keeps me excited about what we do and why we do it and how we do it. And I think if you can ever find a job that you love, then it never seems like a job.
Oh, do you know what I love about hospitality? I fell into it, sort of fell into it. My older stepsister was a waitress at the Royal York, and I thought she looked like she'd got this amazing job. So I went to waitress there. What I love about hospitality is you can go in at any level and choose where you want to be, whether you want to work in accounts. Not that hospitality engineers it for you, but if you've got the appetite, the commitment, and the willingness to learn, you can carve out any path in hospitality. If you work hard and get where you want to be, you can climb the ladder in it. And I can't think of an industry that can provide those opportunities. Can you?
Not easily. And I think one of the things that makes it so special is that you can employ people for attitude here as well as capability. And that attitude will carry people a very, very long way. And if they don't have the right attitude, you can see it very quickly. And then this is not the career.
And it can carry them a long way out the door.
Yeah, it can, because ultimately, we're dealing with guests, and guests can be very demanding or not so demanding, but ultimately they're all people with feelings, and they want to have a good time and a great experience. And at the same time, you're also working with colleagues and employees who also want to get something out of the job that they're doing. They're not just automatons turning up day in, day out, just hoping that it's always going to be the same. And they interact a lot with guests. And, I've got so many stories over the years where guests have had fantastic relationships with members of the team and invited them on holiday to places like America and Australia and so on, because they got on so well. And those guests come back year after year, and they see those people as being extended members of their family. And it's not because, those employees were amazingly well qualified or whatever. They just had a brilliant aptitude for working with guests and members of the public, and it's recognized. There's something really heartwarming about hospitality at times, I think, where you can make a really good human connection with people out of nothing. And those connections can last you for a lifetime. And we're good examples of that, I think, where we were connected through hospitality. And I've got so many former colleagues and peers over the years who, to this day, I'm still very good friends with. And I think this industry is very good at doing that.
I want to talk to you about Croatia, but before then, I want to ask, what role, when you first started working in hospitality, what role did you start at?
My first job was as a conference sales executive for the London Metropole Hotel back in 1990, at a time when that hotel only had 500 bedrooms, and it was a tower block, a 1970s tower block. And they were building a new extension to the building, a little bit cubic in design, which is right on Edgware Road. And that was an extra 150 bedrooms and massive conference facilities. Remember, the original Monarch Suite could take up to 1,200 guests for conferences, and it was something they'd never had. And I met them at the time, was selling advertising for a publishing company in London, and went for the meeting out of chance more than anything else. And I remember very, very vividly the sales director said, "What makes you think you can come and join here as a salesperson?" And I said, "Look, I'm in a world where I'm selling something that isn't published for the next few weeks or months. And here you have a product that people can see, touch, smell, taste, interact with. How hard can that be?" And he bought it, and I joined, and it was only then that I realized exactly how hard it can be. And I really struggled for the first 6 months because I couldn't quite understand the difference that relationships made in that type of role. I'd previously been selling space in a book, and it's quite transactional. But when you're selling an experience in a product like that, and you're going to see conference organizers who are basically putting their career in your hands when you're telling them you can deliver the most amazing conference for them. Can you? Are you sure? Because if they don't get it right, if the hotel does not deliver it, then that organizer has to explain themselves to their bosses, and that can be very difficult if it's been a bad experience. So you have to understand that whatever you're then discussing and agreeing with a customer, you've got to deliver it. And to deliver it, you have to have really great relationships with your peers who are in operations in the hotels. And, you have to be sure that they've got a very clear understanding of what the guest or organizer wants and expects to achieve, and that they can deliver it. And if you can't communicate that, it doesn't happen. And the booker is unhappy and they never use you again. And you have a fairly short career. So, in many ways, you've got to be able to join the dots between understanding the guest or the organizer and then relaying that to the operation of the hotel to be sure that they can execute it to precisely what the customer is expecting. That's the hard part. And I have to be honest with you, it took me at least 6 months to get to grips with that. But once I figured it out, then it came quite naturally. And ultimately, I think, communication is so important in so many ways between what the buyer is looking for and what the seller is delivering. And there are so many deals that go wrong where there's a gap between what the expectation is and what the reality is, simply because it hasn't been communicated properly.
Everything boils down to communication, doesn't it? I just want to say, you are, my business name is Be Unstoppable, and this is a podcast of Being in the Zone. But if there ever was an example of somebody who has been unstoppable in their career and inspirational, David, it's you. You start off as a cheeky, I imagine you were cheeky from the Northeast, it's part of the DNA, a cheeky sales exec in central London to being the CEO and president of a luxury hotel brand in the most.
Well, always so kind.
I'm going to be sending a note for 50 quid, don't worry. In a luxury hotel group in a most beautiful country. If that isn't an example of somebody who, and you know what, I have never seen you. I was thinking, just as you were talking, you're always calm. And I'm thinking, Lisa, you must have made him mad yourself at some point. Have I ever seen you flap, panic? You've always, no matter how hungover, no matter how excited, you've always been level-headed, or the appearance of it. I've seen you go pink a couple of times, but I'm pretty sure that was the sun and a particularly competitive team building day. But you've always been calm, a little bit like slow and steady wins the race. But I would never say you were slow. So what has hospitality given you that you will be forever grateful for?
That's a really difficult question. I wish you'd asked me that a week ago so I could have thought about the answer properly.
I tell you what, we can park it and see if it comes back around. We'll see if it starts to come out, because the mind just does that. Mm-hmm. It's a difficult question because I'm sure there's who you are today is because of the opportunity hospitality gave you to express your personality, push yourself, test yourself, stand up for yourself. Enjoy yourself.
I think the obvious answer is going to be things like a standard of living and a way of life and success and so on. But it's not the right answer. The more I think about it, the right answer is that I have met some really brilliant people over the years, and I've learned so much from them in so many ways, and that's what makes me who I am today. It's not down to me. It's down to a lot of other people and things that I've seen in them and things that I've really wanted to aspire to, different facets of all of them. But in many ways, they make us who we are to this day. And that's the thing I'm always grateful to. I remember one of the best bosses I ever had worked for a book publishing company in central London because he was uber calm about everything. Nothing was ever a drama. We could have a publishing deadline in an hour and we could need a piece of print or a piece of copy or an ad in an hour. And he would say, and I remember him vividly to this day, Jerry Odlin, and he would say, don't worry, we'll get it, we'll do it. This is what we need to do. And then we would all go away and do it. And sure enough, it would be solved. And that was a great lesson at its time, just this clarity of thought, no matter what the circumstances. And, Jerry was great and I learned a lot from him, but there've been so many others along the way, too many to list or name. But, when I look back on those people that I've met and learned from and spent time with, I think one of the qualities that always comes out is that, they're generally very level-headed people. They're pretty calm. They're pretty insightful. They're always thinking left and right about other options. They never just take the blindingly bleeding obvious. And over time, that's just been something that stuck with me. And, I remember when I was quite young in my career, I met someone who went on to become very, very well known in the industry, guy called Stuart Metcalf at Hilton at the time. And Stuart had never met me before, and they just bought Stackis, who I was part of then. And he sat me down and said, look, David, this is pretty simple to me. We have certain expectations in terms of what we want you to achieve in the business. I'll never lose my temper with you. I'll just look you in the eye calmly and tell you whether I think you're performing well or you're not performing well. And then I'll tell you why. And I look back on that and think, what a great way to manage people. No drama, no histrionics, clear communication. This is working or this is not. And then you can do something with it or not. It's your choice. And, I went to work back with Stuart in my IHG days because he was then on the owner's side. And I loved working with him again, and we got on so well. And I think, I look to people like that, and there are many others where they just have a clarity of thinking, and they can cut through the drama of a crisis very, very easily. So, I'm in Croatia and COVID is breaking out and all sorts of stuff going through your head. And you automatically go back to some of the best thinking that you've experienced in your career from those role models, those people who were able to get through other dramas like petrol strike you mentioned, foot and mouth, 9/11, financial crashes. I had the joy and the privilege of working with so many people who could think through those problems very clearly, so that when I'm then in a position like this and it's happening, I instinctively know what to do, but I also instinctively know how to behave. Other people expect you to behave. They don't want to see somebody panicking and having a meltdown. And so they look to you for leadership and good judgment and common sense. And I think that's probably what hospitality has really given me, that I'll be forever grateful for. I've had this brilliant opportunity to learn from so many good people that I'm not sure I'd have been able to get that chance anywhere else.
And it also sounds to me like the bosses you've had have an air of absolute belief. When you were saying about the copy and one deadline and 1 hour deadline, and when somebody speaks with that degree of belief, you behave as though it's true, don't you? And just to talk about belief for a moment, it is very close to my heart. I know that I did some work with a few of your sales teams actually you let me loose with them. That was amazing. I think self-belief in businesses can be seen as something that people work on as a last resort. But I remember a conversation that we had where you said, Lisa, the guys are coming up against a really steep target. They're about to go into renegotiation. The people, and I want them to hold their nerve in those meetings and go for the rate growth that we know that our clients have the capacity to take, and that my team believe in themselves that they can go for it. And in that training, you attended every single one of the trainings. You were fresh as a daisy. You led from the front, and there was nothing that you didn't expect of them that you weren't willing to do yourself. But that whole session was only about self-belief and learning a mindset that puts each person in their success model. And so just from that, how valuable is self-belief to somebody's performance? Black and white answer, which I know I'll get because that's how you are, but black and white answer, because I think businesses need their teams to have the belief in alignment with their skill set. What's your view?
I think there are many times in your career where you're in difficult positions and you've got difficult decisions to make, or you just don't think that things are going your way. And unless you have a level of self-belief that you can rely on and trust, I think life is pretty tough. And that self-belief, I don't know how you get it, and I don't know how it builds itself up, but sometimes you just feel it intuitively, and you have to let it loose. You have to trust it. And there are so many times where the logical part of my brain will think, yes, but is that right? And can that work? And does it add up? And sometimes you just have to let it loose. And that's when I think self-belief can really carry you through those really tough times and those dark places and get you through the other side. And you might not know what the other side looks like, but you made it. And that's the important thing. You made it and you live to fight another day, and then you can build towards the next victory, and you can start to stretch to the next target. And without that, I think it's really impossible. It's so easy to give up so many times. And, people do give up. And it can be such a tragedy in many ways, because I've known circumstances where people have left, or they've just not gone on to do what you would have hoped they could have done. And then shortly after they leave, the opportunity of a lifetime turns up for them, and you just wish that they'd stayed, and they wish that they'd stayed, and so on. But, life gives people different choices and options, and you take what's ahead of you. But without that inner self-belief, I sometimes think it would be so much more difficult. And I don't know. I think experience is a great teacher as well, and that helps consolidate that self-belief within you. And, over time it gets stronger, because you get used to making good decisions, and you get used to certain scenarios that when you were younger, you never felt that you could deal with. But experience gives you the confidence and the knowledge to know that you can deal with it, and you can come out the other side stronger and better and more efficient and faster. And when you begin to understand that, that's when your self-belief gets even stronger. And it gets to a point where you do genuinely feel as though you're unstoppable. You can just plow through whatever the issue is, and you're going to make it. And with that level of experience and knowledge and clear thinking, and the ability sometimes to step back and take another look, that I think helps your self-belief so much. That sometimes when you're younger, I sometimes think now, when I look back, when I was younger, I was just in a hurry all the time and wanted to get on and do well, and never really thought that much about self-belief really, or what it meant. But I think as you get more experienced and a bit wiser, you begin to understand that all of those things that are ahead of you, they're just adding to the story. It's another thing in front of you that you will find a way to get past, if you believe you can. If you believe you can't, then don't try it.
Well, you won't be able to. And linking nicely, I think self-belief is backing yourself, and backing yourself must have been exactly what you needed to do to leave the country you'd only ever lived in, sort of leave your wife, physically leave your wife, but not leave your wife and your two boys, to create a life for everybody in another country, to create a life for everybody whilst you were in another country that speaks a different language to you, with a new hotel chain, no mates over there already, that makes it an easy landing. You must have had self-belief to take that step, because that's a massive step. And not only that, but to run a hotel group. So what was that transition like for you?
I think it didn't work out the way that it was planned, first of all, because obviously COVID got in the way.
6 months later.
I was living in Yorkshire and traveling to London every week, and it's actually easier to get to Dubrovnik. It takes 2 hours, 50 minutes on a plane from Leeds Bradford. So initially, logistics of it were pretty simple. I know you say I had 2 boys and so on, but I should stress they're 25 and 21 now. And
are they? How did that happen?
And at the time this decision was made, my eldest was in university, my youngest was going through A levels and stuff. So it felt like the right time in my life, where they were growing up and moving on. And I'd always really wanted to do something different, because I felt I'd been in the UK a long time and had covered a lot of positions and had grown naturally. But I love change, and I like doing new things and learning new things. And I've got to be honest with you, I took a call from a headhunter saying, we'd like to put you forward for a role in Croatia. What do you think? And I went, no chance, forget it. It's not me. And I don't know why I said that. I just did. And after 3 calls, I then decided to go and meet the owner, and then came away from that thinking, do you know what? This is a really serious business. it's going places, it's very high quality, they're very clear in their thinking in terms of what they want for the business and so on. And it really did give me food for thought. But even then, I still didn't expect it to happen, you know.
Well, I remember talking to you, David, and I remember you having gone over feeling like, God, if I get this, all my Christmases have come at once. This is an unbelievable opportunity with the most amazing chain and people.
But you never really expect these things to happen. You know, I think I just thought, you know, there'll be a lot of other people in Europe and so on, or in Croatia, who are perfect for this role and so on. And for whatever reason, you know, they chose me, and I'm grateful that they did. And I constantly want to prove to them that it was a good decision. And so far, so good. But, you know, I kind of look back then, and it was a decision that I think just felt so natural. And sometimes these things do. I never really got that stressed about it. Obviously, I was stressed about talking to my wife, saying I'm going to be working overseas, and how do we manage the logistics? And the plan originally was, we'll travel back and forwards. It's no problem. And it wasn't. For the first few months, it really wasn't a problem at all. It was just like being in London again, you know, where I was away most of the week and back at weekends. I had family or friends coming out at weekends, or I'd be going back at weekends. But then in February, March of 2020, COVID happened, and then suddenly there was no travel. And I think in 2020, I saw Catherine after I came to Croatia in January 2020, right up until Christmas of 2020, we saw each other for 5 days. And that wasn't in the plan.
No.
You know, I saw my kids for 5 days. That wasn't in the plan. And that was only when they came across. And then the rules changed and quarantine was happening, and they had to fly straight back. So I kind of felt that, look, we're faced with circumstances that we've got to kind of get through. And, you know, obviously I had a job to do here, and that was all about making the right decisions for the company and protecting our employees and making sure that the business was in good shape. And that took a lot of my time.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you know, Zoom that we're now on was brilliant at the time, because we were doing family quizzes at weekends and so on. And everybody was so supportive of me and what I was going through and so on. And it felt okay. It was tough, but it was bearable. And I think what it allowed me to do as well at the same time was to work with the team here very closely to understand that, look, these circumstances are not ideal. How do we make the best of it? So at some point we think it will end. When it ends, how do we become really good at what we do? And how do we become the best that we can be? And what do we need to do now to prepare for that? Because I didn't want to come out of a crisis and just walk at normal pace. I wanted to run.
And not take the crisis as an opportunity.
Correct. Yeah, correct. So in many ways it was pretty strange, but you're right. You know, I landed on August the 31st at about 4:00 in the afternoon, and got collected and basically picked up a key for an apartment and a car key, and then went to Lidl, and because the fridge was empty, and spectacularly dropped a bottle of red wine at the checkout, which exploded and went everywhere. And fortunately, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Don't worry, I'll help," because everybody spoke Croatian and I didn't know a word. And it turned out that Maria works in our finance office, and I was very grateful that she'd recognized the guy who was about to start work the next day and helped me out. But from that point on, the next morning, I came to the office and didn't know anybody, but actually really relished that as a great way to, I think, stretch myself and learn more about what I was capable of, and and also I think to find out more about hospitality industry and how it works internationally, and to understand different markets, different ways of working, different employee mindsets, and so on. And it's really quite liberating when you go somewhere and you don't know anybody.
Yeah.
Literally anybody. You can be completely who you want to be. And, you know, I would go out at the weekend wearing a t-shirt and shorts, and there were people who knew me because I was the boss, but I had no idea who they were. And that's quite liberating. You know, in many ways, you can start from a completely clean page and say, this is what I want us to achieve in this business. And there's no baggage, none whatsoever. And the team either trust you or they don't. So you've got to work quite hard in the beginning to get everybody on board to, you know, to help them, I think, understand that they're not working for an idiot, and to be pretty sure about what you know and what you do, and to be clear about how you want the business to develop, and to trust them as well. You know, I was very conscious. I didn't want to arrive in Croatia and keep saying, but in London we did this. It's just it's not right. In London we learned certain things and certain ways. Doesn't make it right. It makes it right for that situation. In this situation, it's something completely different. So I was very keen in the early days to do a lot of listening and to ask a lot of questions. And I think at times they got a bit sick of me asking questions, but it was good because we could build a relationship up, and I spent quality time with, you know, the key people here who really helped me understand not just how the business was operating, but about the culture of the business and how the business had changed, and what they felt the business needed in the future. And you don't always get the time to be able to do that. And COVID, I think, gave us some time to be able to do that. And then when you begin to understand all of that, then the pieces begin to come together like a big jigsaw much faster. And, you know, listening is a skill for sure. Try listening when it's a foreign language, and the English is excellent here. I have to say that the standard of English is amazing, but I've always wanted to make a point of learning Croatian because I think it's important, and it is unbelievably difficult at times, but I've persevered and kept going, slowly but surely getting better. But it's not easy. And you know, I was laughing with my ops director the other day because he said, when you very first came and we all had lunch together for the first time, we all thought we spoke English quite well. And then we heard you speak and we couldn't understand a word of what you were saying. And I said to him, I wish you'd told me that at the time. Because I, as you know, I'm from Newcastle and I've got a slight Geordie accent, but I hadn't appreciated that just by talking at my normal speed, you wouldn't get it. And I've really slowed down my rate of speaking, and quite dramatically when I think back to the way I used to speak. It was way quicker than it is now. But that's because I'm conscious that I'm speaking to most people and English is their second or their third language. And finding that common ground takes a little bit of time, but it's, you know, it's just one of many lessons that you learn, and that's one of the things that I'm very grateful for. You know, I've started in a new job in a new country in a different position, and asking all of those questions and piecing it together is just another dimension to some of the skills that I've had before in the past, and it changes the way you behave, and it changes the way you think for the better. Not for the worse, for the better. And it makes you realize that they're very similar no matter where you are in the world. You know, ultimately people come here to do the right thing and to do, you know, to have a great day and to do the job well. That's the same in Berlin or Tokyo or London or wherever. It's then beginning to understand, okay, well, how can I now get this team to work the way that I think they need to work to be able to do it all much better? And that's a little bit complicated because culturally that's a bit of a challenge, but it's not impossible by any means. It's really interesting because since I got here, quite a few peers and former colleagues in the UK who have been interested in working overseas but have never had the courage or the opportunity to do so have called me or asked me, could you give me some advice? Could you help me understand what do I need to be aware of? What should I look out for? What are the opportunities? What are the pitfalls? And it's great to be able to give that, because for many people it's really exciting but very daunting. But it's a wonderful thing to do, and it helps you grow as a person. And I'm really very glad I did it. And I would like to say that I think I'm putting a lot back into the industry here by helping the team in Croatia and Dubrovnik. They're also learning new things from me and new learnings from some of the things that we've done elsewhere in the UK or in Europe. And it's a symbiotic relationship. Everybody benefits from this.
And I've just got a couple more questions before I release you back to your team. What's been the steepest learning curve of your career?
Oof. That's a hard question, a very hard question. I think if I look back, it's probably a couple of things. The first is how you manage a crisis, because we've been around a long time and we've had a lot of crises, recessions. I've forgotten how many we've dealt with now. Economic issues, major terrorism incidents, pandemics, foot and mouth, petrol strikes, you name it, we've had them all. And when you go into those situations, it's really important that you can see the other side of what that issue is, and you can prepare to come out of that situation in a stronger position than you are when you're in it, but also to know that you will get through it. They throw different sets of challenges at you, and it's your ability to be able to deal with that and learn from them and question at the same time, did we make the right decision there? Could we have done that better? They are, without a doubt, immensely challenging periods of anybody's career, and they're huge challenges, and you learn a lot from doing them. But I think at the same time, changing roles is also a huge challenge. When you change companies, when you change jobs, when you change positions, in whatever industry, whoever that person is, I think that is a real personal challenge and a test of your own belief. And there's always this, can I make that change? Can I move from company A to company B? Can I go from this job to that job? What will that be like? And that can be quite daunting. And that is also a big challenge, because you have to read the room pretty quickly wherever you're going to, and you have to understand the issues and the opportunities there pretty quickly. And those moments can make or break people quite easily. But I think, in the context of working through the whole of a career, those changes are the big challenges. Changing from steady times to drastic times. Mm-hmm. That's a real issue. Mm-hmm. Changing from one company to another, that's a big step. Changing from a commercial role to a CEO role, that's a big challenge. So change is probably the constant thing within all of that creates the challenge. And I think our ability to deal with change will vary from one person to the next, and some people are much more comfortable with it than others. And I'm pretty comfortable with it, and I quite like it, and I think it keeps us fresh. But I know other people are very different, and they don't like it, and they're less certain with it. But lots of change can be a challenge. But for some people, just one change can be a challenge, and you have to remember that. So I think that's probably, in my eyes, that's the answer to your question, and I hope that's something you were looking to hear.
And my final question is, I've got two. One might be a bit too deep. Is, what would you say to your 10-year-old version of you? Because it was just you and, was it just you and your mum? Did you have a sister?
No.
Only child.
Brother. At 10 years old, life was pretty tough. I was in a very poor family. I was in a broken, my parents had separated when I was very young. And I think I was going through a little bit of a rebellious stage and was probably doing things behind my mom's back I shouldn't have been doing, and getting into all sorts of trouble and stuff like that. But I could never really think beyond the next few days and weeks at that age, because you don't. But I think I probably had quite a big chip on the shoulder, because I didn't think that things were going my way. And I was in a school, and I had some great mates, and they were all in happy homes, and everything was hunky-dory. And I think for me and our family, it wasn't always like that. And we're a typical Northeast working class family, and like a lot of families, and even some today who are struggling in difficult times with cost of living and so on, you doubt whether things will get better, and you think it might always be this way. And I was a young lad fighting battles on the Meadowell estate in Tyneside, which was a tough place to grow up. And many people don't make it out of that estate, and I did. And I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had along the way to be able to do that. So my advice would be, no matter what, things can get better and can improve, and you can have out of life what you want, provided you're prepared to put the time and effort in to make it work for you. Nothing ever just gets served up on a plate. You always have to, I think, be prepared to work for it and to make it happen, and to seek the opportunities. And don't give up. Don't give up. Keep pushing on. No matter how hard it gets, there is always sunshine after a storm. And that's the time when you start to begin to think, okay, yeah, actually, this is great, and things are getting better. I started to study and did okay at school and stuff like that. And then you begin to think, okay, yeah, this is great. I'm enjoying life. So, but I know it's not always like that. And in this day and age where, people are beginning to understand now the impact and the harm that anxiety and stress can make to people, and how people really struggle with depression and mental health issues. It's tough. I know it's tough. And, I've seen people go through what that means. But just individually, I've always felt, keep fighting, keep going. You'll get there. The dream is not impossible. You can, if you keep pushing, if you don't give up, if you have that inner belief, if you feel that you're going to be unstoppable, you probably can be. And sometimes fake it till you make it. If you trick your mind into thinking that actually this is going to be okay, we'll get through this, and from that point on, I think you're on a good path.
I mean, when you think about that 10-year-old version that you've described, I wonder if he ever believed he'd be the CEO and president of a luxury hotel group in another country.
Definitely not. You would never have dreamt it.
Exactly. But what it sounds to me that happened was that I believe that life reveals, or the mind reveals, the next chapter of what's potential. So it reveals our chapters of our potential. enough so that it doesn't scare us, and enough that we keep. I was interviewing somebody yesterday in a previous episode, Simon Middleton, who runs ultra marathons, 100-mile marathons, and there are 7-mile checkpoints. And I feel like, and you just see the race in 7-mile chunks. And I feel like our mind and life reveals the next chapter, but it's not the whole picture. It's just the picture it knows where it scare the life out of you and that will keep you moving in it. And I think good for the 10-year-old version of David, David Taylor, who could well have stayed in Tyneside on that estate and done all right, got a day job, done all right, but no,
I still know people there who I'm in touch with, and it's cool. Very happy people and doing great.
Yeah. But for you just kept fulfilling your potential, and you are unstoppable, David. And I think you're a huge inspiration to everybody. And so thank you so much for your time, your heart, your spirit, your laughter, and for being in my life.
Well, that's really very kind of you to say, and you don't need to say that, but it is appreciated. And, I value having spent so many years with you along the way. We've had a lot of laughs and we've achieved a lot. And whilst we don't see each other that much these days, it's always good to be in touch and to speak to you. And similarly, I think the work that you're doing at the moment is really important, and people will gain a lot from it. And just the ability, I think, to have some help and support to begin to understand what they can achieve in life can really unleash huge potential. So keep doing it and keep helping people achieve that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.